Domaya Mompai, yet I was era, a bremu. So I'm Yanya Konya, say, Yemetua and addition so. Your soul, sunny home, never church train. It will Jesus Christ to Demonti. Amen. Remember, we have been studying the image to the beast, the formation of the image to the beast. In fact, Obronika said it is the last act in the drama, the unity of church and state. Very important, and we will come on some greater details in our subsequent discussions. Last week, we ended at talking about Christ in his incarnate stage. Ebra Nyankopon ebeye nipa, ena ye contrasted no with the papacy in its incarnate state, an earthly power assuming divine power. And it's so important. An earthly power assuming divine power, of which its leadership, human being becoming God. And no, and I shall say a car and once. We are moving to the third part of the beast, the same yesterday, today, and forever. A key text now, Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. So we are talking about the beast and his image. The beast and his image. But in name we are trying to identify and establish the point that the beast is in existence. Otiase. People believe that Obeba after Nyamema had gone to heaven. No, we will establish that. And no na ye bese yehu. And no na ye tracy in relation to Christ. If it's a Christo, our 3 stages: his pre-incarnate stage, his incarnate stage, and his post-incarnate stage. Saranso and a beast nonso. Our 3 stages: the pre-incarnate stage, the incarnate stage, and the post-incarnate stage. And until this time, the Mayan Kokoboy Tato say, Erade say we should not worship the beast and his image. And until ye be said, you say, I didn't know say. Obi a watan no kre tumi a watan no kre ade na ye duama ye Christopher nyamema say betimi identify na ya twe ye ho afre ho eno na nam so ama ho abehia say ye Christ in his 3 stages in man's redemption, and also the beast in its 3 stages in its counter redemption strategy. Enti ebremu nya epesi bi sende 1 Yesu ba asasi so no in his incarnate state, because a parallel near a cause now Israel, he was the Lord over Israel. Near mono Obasa season, you could see a repetition of the same thing. Now, did Christ reaffirm his lordship over the Sabbath? The answer is yes. Christ established the Sabbath in his pre-incarnate stage. Obaye or affirming say indeed he is the Lord of the Sabbath. In Mark chapter 2 verse 27 and 28, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man. You see, Genesis. Back to Genesis. The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Verse 28. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. In Luke chapter 4 verse 16, and he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. Christ worshipped on the Sabbath. Ebra obeye nipa. If it's what the man nipa in his pre-incarnate state, on one kasebeye nipa no, he worshipped on the Sabbath. Contrast. Did the papacy also affirm his lordship over her Sabbath? Because we had a sun worship. We had a day dedicated to the sun god in the papacy's pre-incarnate stage. That was during pagan Rome, papal Rome. Do we have a Sabbath day? Yes. Sunday was changed to the resurrection day. The venerable day of the sun, that is of the sun god Mithra, which was Sunday, which was purely pagan, now became a memorable day for the resurrection of Christ. So the Sunday was metamorphosized into another Sunday. It changed from being a pagan thing to
a religious thing. That was what happened. So Catholic record, September 1, 1923. Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible. And this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. So here we see Christ establishing the Sabbath. The papacy in its in its incarnate state, we see the papacy establishing Sunday as its mark of authority. Contrast. Now, what was the religion of Christ on earth? Monotheist. He recognized that yes, we serve only one true God. In Mark chapter 12, verse 29, and Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandment is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. Christ established the monotheistic nature of true worship. We serve one God. What was the religion of the Antichrist on earth during the papal times? Did we see the same thing that occurred during the beast in its pre-incarnate state? Exactly, polytheism. Did we see that? Yes. Were there statues and images in the cathedrals who were called saints through whom prayers were said? Did they recognize Mary as a co-mediatrix? Images, statues were all established with several names. Jupiter changed to Peter and several other names. We still had these images through whom prayers were said. Did Christ continue to be the mystic ladder that connects heaven and earth? Exactly so. In John chapter 1 verse 51, and he said unto him, verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Christ established that he is the connection. He is the bridge between heaven and earth, between the fallen and the divine. Christ affirmed it. Now, in John 14, Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Christ established that he is the only way, he is the only bridge through which humanity can make it to God. Did the Antichrist continue to be the mystic ladder that connects heaven and earth? The answer is yes. The popes assumed the role as high priest. In fact, they assumed also the titles of the Roman emperors, Pontifex Maximus. Do you know the meaning of Pontifex? Pontifex means priest. Maximus means supreme, the highest bridge maker. So that title, which was accorded to the emperors, was entrusted to the popes when they took over in the beast in its incarnate stage. Now, let's move on. Did Christ face opposition in the discharge of his mission? The answer is yes, as we've established in the previous discussion. And he had problem with his own people. Who were they? The Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now the question is that, did the Antichrist power also face opposition in the discharge of its duties? The answer is yes. Who were they? The Protestants. Exactly the same thing. They faced the same opposition. Now the question is that, on what issues did the Jews find problem with Christ? What were the issues? In fact, they found problem with his exact mission on earth. And what was his mission? Restoration, redemption. Exactly his mission. And no, and how in Luke chapter 19 verse 10, for the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. Christ has come to restore us back into harmony with the Father. This was the mission of Christ. And now, how did Christ perform his work of salvation? Or how did Christ perform his work of salvation? In Matthew chapter 9 verse 12, Jesus said, they that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. So Christ worked as a physician because people were sick as far as their soul were concerned. And so Christ came to heal. So in his work of restoration, as we've said, it was not only a spiritual restoration, but it was also physical. And we're going to talk much about that in the future discussion. So Christ did not only heal spiritually, but he also healed physically. He healed physically. Now, the question is that there were instances that they accused Christ. We're going to talk about it. And what accusation did they level against Christ in the pursuit of his mission? They accused Christ of being blasphemous. Christ caused blasphemy In John chapter 3 and 10, verse 30 to 33, I and my Father are one. Then the Jews took up stones again to stone him. Jesus answers them, many good works have I shewed you from my Father. For which of those works do ye stone me? Verse 33. Then the Jews answered him, saying, for a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy. And because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. So Christ was being accused of being blasphemous because he said, I and my Father are one. In other words, Christ affirmed that he was God. In Mark chapter 2, verse 1 to 7. And again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. Verse 2. And straightway many were gathered together, in so much there was no room to receive them. No, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. And they came unto him, bringing one sick of palsy, which was born of 4. And when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, they uncovered the roof where he was. And when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. When Jesus saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. But there were certain of the scribes sitting there and reasoning in their hearts. Verse 7. Why doth this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only? So the accusation was very simple. They accused Christ of being blasphemous. That was the accusation. Now, how? Now we move on. On what issue did the reformers also find problem with the Antichrist? His exact mission. What was his mission? John 10 verse 10. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. Now, how did the papacy perform his work of counterfeit restoration or counterfeit salvation? Baltimore, Crusoe Brothers, 1876. This is what he says. There is a man on earth who can forgive sins. You see, Christ was being accused of the very thing that the papacy too was being accused. There is a man on earth who can forgive sins, and that man is the Catholic priest. The same Baltimore, Crusoe Brothers, 1876. Yes, beloved brethren, the priest not only declares that the sinner is forgiven, but he really forgives him. So exactly the work that Christ was performed in his incarnate stage, the priest in his incarnate stage performed similar work. Christ's own was pure, this was impure. Christ's own was genuine, the beast's own was counterfeit. This is what prevailed. So, and what accusation did the reformers level against the papacy? Blasphemy. And then they named the papacy Antichrist, because Christ could do that because he was God. But the Antichrist could not do that because he was not God, but he appeared to be God. And there the name came up, Antichrist. So, and this issue gave birth to the Reformation. So there were twin pillars of the Reformation, or the Reformation stood upon two pillars. Number one, the rediscovery of Christ and his salvation. Two, the discovery of the identity of the Antichrist. Now, when it comes to identifying the Antichrist, all the reformers were unanimous. They were all unanimous in telling or in fixing or in saying who the Antichrist was. Let's listen to Martin Luther. Martin Luther. What did Martin Luther say? He said, "O Christ my Lord, look down upon us and bring upon us thy day of judgment and destroy the brood of Satan in Rome. There sits a man of whom the apostle Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3 and 4 that he will oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God." Martin Luther applied 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 to the beast and called him the Antichrist, that man of sin, that son of perdition. What else is papal power but sin and corruption? It leads souls to destruction under thine own name, O Lord. In Dr. Martin Luther's Samlish Works, Elegant Edition, volume 21.2, 339. So Martin Luther was very clear. The papacy was the Antichrist. John Calvin, he was the head of the Presbyterian Church. Some persons think us too severe and censorious when we call the Roman pontiff Antichrist, but those who are of this opinion do not consider that they bring the same charge of presumption against Paul himself, of whom we speak and whose language we adopt. I shall briefly show that in Paul's words in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 are not capable of any other interpretation than that which applies to them, to the papacy. John Calvin affirmed that the papacy was the Antichrist. Blasphemy, was being blasphemous. Thomas Cranmer, Anglican Archbishop, whereof it followeth Rome to be the seat of Antichrist, and the Pope to be the very Antichrist himself. Thomas Cranmer was very clear. Roger Williams, Baptist. Pastor Williams spoke of the Pope as the pretended vicar of Christ on earth. All the reformers consistently affirmed that the papacy was the Antichrist. Today, we don't know who the Antichrist is. The Antichrist has vanished. No. Christ is Christ in his incarnate stage. Christ in his post-incarnate stage is still Christ. So if the Antichrist was Antichrist in his incarnate stage, how come he's changing in his post-incarnate stage? He is still the same Antichrist. Now John Wesley, head of the Methodist Church, what does he say? He, that is the Pope, is an emphatic sense, the man of sin. As he increases, all manner of sin above measure, and he is too properly styled the son of perdition, as he has caused the death of numberless multitudes, both of his opposers and followers. It is that exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worship, claiming the highest power and highest honor, claiming the prerogatives which belong to God alone. The reformers were so unanimous. Who is the Antichrist? The papacy. Charles Spurgeon, some say he's the greatest preacher the world has ever seen. Let us hear what he says. He says, it is the bounden duty of every Christian to pray against Antichrist. And as to what Antichrist is, no sane man ought to raise a question. If it be not the popery in the Church of Rome, then there is nothing in the world that can be called by that name. Popery is contrary to Christ's gospel and is the Antichrist, as we ought to pray against it. They were all unanimous. In an actual fact, I want to ask this question. What actually was under attack during the Dark Ages? This was under attack. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 11 and 12, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. What was under attack? The sanctuary. The sanctuary. Why would the sanctuary be under attack? Because that was where Christ's mediatorial work for all sinners is done. That is where Christ's mediatorial work. That is why the sanctuary was under attack. John therefore sees Christ in the only place. To John, and this one, he saw Christ in the sanctuary. There was a true sanctuary in heaven. In Revelation chapter 1 verse 13, and in the midst of the seven candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with the garment down to the foot. So where did he see the Son of Man? In the midst of the seven candlesticks. In the sanctuary, the candlesticks are found in the holy place. So the attack was upon Christ, who was performing mediatorial work. In Hebrews chapter 8 verse 1 and 2, now of the things we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched, and not man. So that which was under attack was the sanctuary. But where was the sanctuary at the time of the people read? Because we already stated that the sanctuary was in heaven. The earthly sanctuary had come to an end. Christ had moved to heaven. He has entered into the holy place, mediating for fallen humanity. Whoever accepts him and confesses his sins is forgiven. So it was also at that same time that there was an attack on the sanctuary. Who then was the high priest and man's mediator at the time? Christ. In Hebrews chapter 8 verse 1, we have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. It is only Christ who was in heaven. Now, with what was Christ ministering? In Hebrews chapter 9 verse 12, but by his own blood. Christ was ministering by his blood. So, where was all attention to be shifted? That is the key. And it's a yes or so. Now, what did my idea? And even was doing in up heaven upon who? Christ, who was God and man at the same time. And by what means were our sins supposed to be forgiven? By faith. But where had attention been shifted? The attention has been shifted down here on earth. Upon who? Upon man who had assumed to be God. And by what means were the sins forgiven? By works. You perform this, you do that, your sins are forgiven. So, in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 16, Paul tells us, let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace. Where is the throne? In heaven. that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So, in summary, the church of the Middle Ages set up an earthly ministration or an earthly sanctuary called the confession system to counteract the very mediatorial work that Christ was performing for sinners in heaven. Exactly what Christ was doing in heaven. There was a miniature, an image, a likeness here on earth. And instead of all attention being fixed up or being fixated up, all attention were being fixated down. So the church also instituted an earthly priest called the Holy Father, whereas Christ has warned against the calling of any earthly leader, father, let alone holy. Now, so humanity assumed the role of divinity during the Dark Ages. The church made Mary a co-mediatrix. Now, prayers were said through Mary. So, what had happened? Christ was completely removed from the systems of the church. In fact, it was a war against Christ. Therefore, if Christ, the true light, is removed, then we are indeed in darkness. Hence, the name Dark Ages from 538 to 1798. And the most surprising thing was the pomp, the display, the pageantry, and the costly apparel of the papacy, as against the poverty, the simplicity of Jesus while on earth. Christ had nothing. Christ was so poor. He was so normal. But look at the regalia of the papacy. So huge. Costly apparel. They saw that contrast and they saw this can never be the vicar of Christ. This can never be the true Christ. This indeed is the Antichrist. So Christ said in Mark chapter 7, verse 9 to 13. And also the Reformer said, and he said unto them, for who will you reject the commandments of God, that ye may keep your own tradition, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which ye have delivered, and many such like this thing ye do. So this is what happened. It was the establishment of a likeness of the original here on earth, whereas all attention needed to be shifted on the original in heaven. May God help us to understand as we move to further discuss the papacy and Christ, all in their post-incarnate stage. Already there was aboy amayate sa wonsem we ase my hon konkon na yentumi nkoso ante wase na yegyina ma ori yebrem e wo Yesu Kristo dem nti. Amen.